So, today I would like to talk about how I've been way deep down the arcade stick rabbit hole again. I think most of you can imagine, due to the timing of this video, kind of. Well, we're a little bit late, but this is primarily inspired by Guilty Gear Strive. Where not just me, but like a lot of my friends sort of, like every time a big new fighting game comes out, there's always the question, okay, should you use an arcade stick? Should you upgrade your controller or whatever? Should you, what should you do? Is it okay to just play with the default pad? The thing is, I do really genuinely believe that, the advice that people tend to give, that like, oh, just don't worry about it, just use whatever you want, or you can, you can perform equally well with both or whatever. I think that's not very helpful, right? It's not really what people want to hear who are asking those sorts of questions. I do think it is valuable to clear up this misconception that an arcade stick will immediately improve your performance. That's not really true like that. Maximilian actually did a pretty good video on it recently, where he basically said, yeah, there's like certain things that controllers and sticks are like, they have different levels of like, fucking being good at. With how lenient modern games are with motion inputs, a lot of the time it actually is more efficient to just use a D-pad. A D-pad actually is faster, if you think about it. And honestly, I'm at the point where like I can do DP motions and stuff, DP Dragon Punch. I can do stuff like that like pretty easily with the D-pad, and honestly, like I actually do it more reliably on a D-pad than on a stick probably. As a general rule of thumb. But I'm gonna talk more about that. Generally, the idea is that with modern games, the main advantage of an arcade stick is A, the reliability, right? You can see there was one tweet the other day, not even the other day, like it was a little bit ago, but it kind of changed my whole perspective on this thing, because I used to try to like find a fight pad, right? I was so convinced of the idea that like, oh yeah, I can't play with a stick, right? It's not for me. So I was just looking for a controller with like a solid D-pad and 6 face buttons, and I thought, okay, that'll be it. And the thing you're gonna learn is that all of these things will just fucking break on you. They're not fucking reliable whatsoever. Every single one that I tried has some fucking weird issue. Honestly, the closest that I got may have been the Razer Ryan that came out relatively recently. I tried it for a little bit, I didn't keep it, because I wasn't even buying it for fighting games, I was buying it for like retro games. And the D-pad felt amazing, it was like really clicky. It was like this big disc kind of. It felt really cool. The problem was that the buttons were very, the actuation point was very low, and they did not have like tactile feedback or anything. I guess they felt like a lot like sort of red keyboard switches, if you're familiar with those, which I personally just don't like. I feel like I might get over that if I actually give it a serious chance, right? But like it was just not for the thing I was looking for, right? For like platformers and stuff like that, it wasn't really the right fit. Just splash water on my face. So yeah, there was this tweet saying, yeah, you can hit like. You will look at fight pad players, and they have just this whole graveyard of fight pads, and every single one of them has like a story attached to them, whereas I hit my arcade stick buttons like they owe me money, and it's fine. And that juxtaposition sort of, it like definitively showed to me, okay, yeah, fight pads are not it, right? You just gotta stick with stick, because it's way more reliable. I do wonder, like, if you're... Well, that's the thing. I mean, it depends on how serious you are, right? With fighting games. I guess if you're just playing at home, you can use a PS4 pad, PS5 pad, fine. But like, it's not like you can really bring that shit to tournaments. Sorry, I promised I would not do the bottle thing again. So, yeah, I don't know. From a lot of angles, I just personally also, I just find it more enjoyable, you know? I find it way more enjoyable to, like, have this giant stick and, like, these big buttons. And even with retro games, like, there's some nice advantages to arcade sticks. I like that they're so... The layout is so agnostic, it can fit any console that you want. And that's why I wanted to get, like, I wanted to get the 8-bit Do arcade stick. Specifically from my Mister. I want to do, like, a video on the Mister eventually. That'd be pretty fun. The Mister is basically a better Raspberry Pi, right? It's like a little emulation box, except that the hardware is emulated, right? Or is emulating the respective consoles. So it's actually changing the properties of the processor, right? Instead of translating instructions like how you have on a what you have on a PC emulator. Anyway, for that, I want to get the 8-bit Do arcade stick and then put in Sama buttons because I have those left over actually, and I have a Sama stick left over now as well. Because yeah, that's the main thing I want to talk about, right? Like that. I've been just getting way into modding and like trying out different parts and different brands and all this stuff again. Just final note on the 8-bit Do stick before I move on. Apparently it's wireless, 2.4 gigahertz, and it seems to work reasonably well. I saw some reasonable looking input lag data. And it'd be nice to just have, again, something that's wireless and something where the buttons aren't like super specifically labeled and shit, where like, you know, you could realistically use it with anything you want. Because like, yeah, like right now I'm using mainly on the Mister, I'm using the Super Nintendo Switch pad with a cable and an original Sega Saturn controller with an adapter. And both of those work fine for my purposes, but it'd just be nice, you know, just be a vibe to like have just like, oh, this like little retro thing, and I mainly use the arcade stick to interact with it. It'd just be cool. So my first proper arcade stick that I got was the Mayflash F500 Elite, and it's still the one that I have, right? But I have 2 more sticks planned that I want to get, and then I'll be set. The thing about that stick is, like, number one, it's multi-platform, which is nice. The way it works is that you plug in the controller of the console that you're playing. So you plug the controller into the stick. You plug a 360 controller or an Xbox One controller or a PS4 controller into the stick itself. And then it just works. Not like the most convenient, but it was just nice to have, again, something that's multi-platform. And then the other thing is that it has Sama parts. And Sama is like the big fucking, you know, the accepted sort of standard, like the most manufacturers put into their sticks, right? If you buy a Razer or a Mad Cat stick, they're using Sama parts. They're the most, again, widely used arcade parts in Japan. The most traditional thing that you're gonna see. And they feel high quality and I like it, but like, the thing you're gonna have to get, you will have to get used to with, generally with arcade sticks immediately is the fact that they use a square gate. So the stick, you know, so when I say stick, I'm gonna clarify this now, right? Like if I say stick, I mean the whole thing, and then obviously there's the buttons, and then there's the lever, right? The lever is the actual thing that you use to move your character. And one of the first things you'll notice is the satisfying micro switch noises when you move the stick. It's really nice. I'm not gonna pull up I'm not gonna do that. So the lever, if you move it, 2 things, right? Like number one, with most levers in like fucking machinery, whatever, you push the lever and then it stays there. With an arcade stick, obviously needs a mechanism to like make it snap back to the neutral position, right? So that's one thing, but then the other thing is that needs some kind of restricting. Again, they call it a gate, right? I guess like it's like a little disc with a hole in it, right? I guess you can imagine like not really a donut, right? But like it's a little disc with a hole. And generally with Sama sticks, the disc that comes with them, the gate that comes with them, is square. And that has like a lot of fucking historical reasons, whatever. I think Hoary Gaming, actually, they have like some nice videos on that. Yeah, I'm gonna repeat, core-a-gaming. Really great fighting game channel. Just generally the way they go into like psychology and like just always tie it back to real world concepts with fighting games is very fascinating. It's very, very fucking well done. Yeah. I think to most people the square actually kind of feels unnatural, right? Because you're trying to go 8 directions, and you have these 4 distinct corners, right? So when I push my lever bottom left, my character will, for example, crouch and block in a fighting game. And then the problem is that the points between the corners, they don't have any sort of places to rest in, right? I guess the closest comparison is like something like the GameCube analog stick. If you use a Nintendo GameCube, right? That's an Octagon. Yeah, obviously with that kind of system, you can move the stick a little bit more smoothly, and like it more directly corresponds to the 8 directions that you would be using, right? So the natural assumption that you make is like, or that I made anyway, is that, oh shit, an octogate, right? The same disc, but it's an octagon instead of a square, is probably way fucking better. And like, it does feel more natural to move the stick sort of that way. But the piece of information that I recently learned that blew my mind, and I guess it should have been obvious, right, is that the distance from like the neutral position to the edge of the gate on an octogate is not the same everywhere. Specifically, the distance between neutral and the diagonals is way shorter. Actually, yeah, it's the diagonals, yeah. The distance between the neutral position and the diagonals is way shorter than it is on the square gate, and it actually gives you less freedom to move, right? And with fighting games, one thing that you learn, that fighting game players will tell you, is that you're not supposed to ride the gate. So when you're pushing, you're not supposed to push the stick all the way to the edge of the gate. You're supposed to move within the gate, right? And if you're using an octagon and you have less room to move, that's actually way fucking harder. And yeah, like people will just tell you, even though it feels more natural at the start, you're actually hampering your execution more in the long run, right? So I actually moved back to the square gate very recently when Guilty Gear came out, because I was just noticing I was doing just a lot of random bullshit, and I was not very precise with my motions, right? And I knew I had to change something. Another kind of obvious mod that you can do that's a little confusing, my friend Björn, I was doing like a Guilty Gear training session with him, and I showed him my stick, right? To like, I wanted to show him my hand position to explain some stuff. And he asked me, oh, why do you have a Korean lever? Because he saw that, yeah, what you'll know is that most Sama sticks, they come with what is called a ball top, right? The lever, the lever is this metal stick, and at the top you have like a plastic ball that you can grip, right? That's how most sticks come by default. But you can swap out this ball with a more bat-shaped design that gives you more surface area to grip. And that's why I explained, like, the Korean sticks, the Korean levers, they generally come with bat tops by default, but having a bat top doesn't necessarily mean that it's a Korean stick, right? I still had like a generic fucking normal Asama stick. I just swapped out the top. And that's another thing that I realized, sort of, for the way I was holding the stick, and for, for Asama and for the square gate, that's actually not the way to go, because it gives your hand just it's like harder to exert force on the lever, right? And that's the thing, because you want to move it within the gate, you need to move it a little bit more delicately, and again, that's harder when you're not using the ball top, right? So I went back for that for a while, but I still wasn't really satisfied. I kind of had this feeling that I was way too aggressive on the stick, right? I was like, I'm just someone, I'm just a big gorilla, I have big hands, I just make big motions. And like, it's really useful to, if you go into training mode in a fighting game, right? You can turn on this thing called an input display, and it will just show all the buttons that you're pressing on the left side of the screen, right? Just the moment you press square, it will show a little square symbol, right? And it will also show all your directions, right? And I was just noticing, yeah, I can do a quarter circle, for example, or a dragon punch motion. Like, the game will recognize it as such, and the move will come out. But then I look at the input display, and I realize, oh shit, I also did a bunch of useless motions that didn't actually matter, and that were very inefficient, and that could cause mistakes, right? So I realized, okay, something has to change. And, you know, we just broached the subject a little bit with Korean levers, right? Korean levers, Core Gaming, they said the same thing. Like, Korean levers, they have kind of a cult following to them. People who use Korean lever, they swear by it. They're like, it's like fucking gospel. It's a cult, whatever. And generally, Korean levers are very popular in the Tekken scene, right? The idea generally is that Tekken doesn't really have much in the way of motion inputs, right? Where you do quarter circles or whatever. It's more about like very short, precise movements in specific directions. And for that, the Korean lever is ideal, right? So from that perspective, I like actually asked about it, sorry. I asked about it in advance, like, hey, would a Korean lever be for me? Because like I hear with 2D fighting games, it's not actually preferred, right? Sorry about that. And, you know, I saw just mixed reactions. I couldn't really get a conclusive answer, so I was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna try it, right? And I'm gonna talk about this more later, but, like, that's kind of the idea that I want to relay, that, part of the fun of arcade sticks is to try different brands, right? You can't really, like, the thing about every stick coming with Sama parts, I think, the problem with that is that I really do think every kind of player needs their own kind of stick and their own kind of buttons, right? It's such a huge personal preference thing that I think you're gonna get the most enjoyment out of it if you're willing to actually open up the stick and try different brands, right? That's why, like, I always recommend, like, I had, like, this big order, you know, where I ordered my Korean lever, but I also ordered, like, a random button from, like, this brand that I hadn't tried before, because I wanted to see how it feels, right? I didn't buy, like, 8 buttons immediately, because, obviously, you know, it's kind of a waste of money if I don't know that I like it yet. But yeah, that's kind of the approach that I suggest taking with it. So I got the Korean lever, right? And the Korean lever, to finally explain sort of what the difference is, right? I explained earlier, the lever needs a mechanism to return back to neutral when you let go of it. Japanese levers, generally, not just Sama, Japanese levers generally use a spring, a metal spring, that snaps back. And the result of that is that you have pretty consistent tension when you move the thing, right? And, like, generally the feeling of the stick is, like, you have a little bit of an actuation point at the start where, like, you need to get past that point when you push the stick, the lever, sorry. Well, I mean, it is a stick, right? But, like, I'm trying to keep the terminology consistent. I'm trying to say stick when I mean the whole thing, even though it doesn't really make sense. Whatever. You push the lever past this, like, this point, and then kind of moves freely and loosely. With the Korean lever, it's very different. The Korean lever, instead of a spring, uses what is called a rubber grommet. It's like, yeah, it's a small disc made of rubber. I guess you could, yeah, I was trying to compare the gate, the plastic gates, to like a donut before. The rubber grommet is like kind of like a rubber donut, right? It has a small hole in the center that the stick sort of fits through, right? And you can imagine the lever, sorry. If I now push the lever, I have like a small area where the stick sort of moves freely, but then the further I push it, the more tension the rubber will exert, right? And when I let go of the stick, it like snaps back a lot more rapidly. It's actually interesting to observe that yeah, on a Sama, it's like the super rigid. Just it feels like, you know, ping-ponging between two states. Whereas with the Korean lever, if you let go of it, it not just snaps back immediately, but also it snaps back with such force that the stick will like sort of wiggle, you know, with the aftershock essentially. And it feels nice. Well, okay. I mean, that alone by itself sort of feels very satisfying. The stick at first feels very weird, right? I use a crown lever that there's a very popular one because it's very easily compatible with Japanese sticks, right? With Japanese molds and cases, whatever. Generally, if you want to have more flexibility with Korean brands, you need to like drill holes and shit, and it's very different. Generally, yeah, you need a bigger hole to fit a Korean lever. That sounds very nasty out of context, probably. No, I haven't really been able to observe all the differences between all the Korean brands in practice, right? I've only tried this one. The main sort of thing is that you can swap out the grommet, right? You can swap out the rubber grommet and get different levels of tension from that. And the stick that I got has, I think it's like, they just use fucking normal numbers to delineate the tension. And the lowest you can get is like 25. And that's the one I have, right? The stick that I got came with the 25 grommet. And just to sort of mess around with it, right, I bought, in that order, I got an extra grommet that's like 35. I was like, okay, like if it's not tense enough for me, I might swap it out, right? I might experiment with that. Well, no, like for me, I immediately, when I tried out the Korean lever, I was like, oh shit, this feels very tense. It already feels very different from the Japanese stick. And actually, my conclusion is that as someone, like I said, who's a gorilla and who's very aggressive on the stick, it actually cleaned up my execution immediately. I was immediately getting way fucking better results, and my input display looked way cleaner. Especially, I messed around with it in Third Strike a lot, and obviously that's an older game that's not as lenient as newer games. And I could just see when I do the Z motion with the stick, I actually get a Z, right? Like I'm not, even though I'm very aggressive with it, right? I use a lot of force. If you use that kind of force on a Sama, again, you're just gonna get a lot of random nonsense that you don't want, and I feel like you need to move just a lot more cautiously on Sama. And the Korean lever really fixed that for me immediately. And that's why I think for 2D games, a Korean lever with low tension, relatively low tension, is probably a nice combo, right? For a Tekken player, they probably want something with higher tension. But then if you do that, it's probably not suitable anymore for 2D games, because then it becomes too difficult to actually do the motion. There's too much force, right? But yeah, that sweet spot for me felt fucking ideal. I'm super happy with this purchase. Now, on the flip side, I gotta say, I do think it feels weird for other genres. The Korean lever does not feel ideal for me for platformers or shmups or stuff like that, right? And that's why I'm very happy with the idea that I had, okay, I'll just have different sticks for different purposes, right? A big consideration that I neglected to mention so far is that with the Korean levers, they come with the circle gate. And as far as I understand, that's sort of by design and you can't swap it out, right? It's an intrinsic part of the thing. And for me, the circle felt like the best middle ground, right? It felt like very natural to move the stick that way, unlike a square gate, but without really hampering the movement ability as much as the Octagon kind of does. But that's another thing that makes it like not that great for platformers or shit like that. That's why I was like thinking, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do yet with buttons definitively. I have Saimitsu buttons right now that have a little bit more tactility than the Sama buttons. They have a little bit more of a harder sort of activation point, and I like those. But I was thinking I'll buy the Hoary Fighting Edge, right? Because the Hoary Fighting Edge, if you Google it, it's like this big fucking chunky aluminum stick, right? With an aluminum body. And the parts are Hoary parts. Hoary is like one of the biggest. Like Sama themselves, they don't actually sell sticks, right? They just sell the parts. And then Hoary is one of the big brands making sticks, but they're also using their own parts, and they're considered tournament grade. They're considered like very respected. And I was like, okay, if I get a Hoary stick, I get Hoary parts, right? So I can try those and see what I like about them. Especially the buttons, I'm curious about. The thing that I like is that it seems so robust, right, and so sturdy. Because that's my one criticism with the Mayflash stick. Number one, I mean, the gray body of the Mayflash looks very cheap and ugly. My good buddy Riff, he got the same stick actually, and he painted the body of the stick, which seems like a great idea, except I'm like very lazy and don't want to bother. The thing that really bothered me though is that the plexiglass on top of the stick, you can, with most arcade sticks, there's like a plexiglass on top, and then you can lift it up and put artwork underneath, which is almost kind of necessary because most of these sticks, they come with like pretty generic or tacky or nondescript artwork. And see, I'm not sure, I don't quite recall if it was like this at the start when I bought it, but there's one spot, sort of at the top of the plexi, where it's not completely even, right? It's using magnets to stick to the actual body of the stick. And, yeah, there's just one spot where it kind of wobbles when I press on it, and it's very fucking annoying. And, like, generally, just that whole thing, right, the body feeling kind of wobbly, it's not something that bothered me when I first bought it, but now I'm like, okay, like, I think I'm ready to move on. Even though the stick, for what it is, it's, like, really good, and I would recommend it. Especially, like, it's one of the cheaper ways to just get Sama parts. And also, again, it's multi-platform. So I'm still gonna keep it, I'm still gonna use it, but yeah, I'm gonna use it for random consoles like the 360, for example, right? If there's a shmup I want to play on the 360. Shit like that. So that's one of the reasons I want to move on to something that's where I'm like sure it's like super robust and sturdy, right? And I know in the Hoary Fighting Edge, I think you can do your own artwork. You can get like a plexi for it. But by default, the top of the body is just, again, this aluminum thing. Which is kind of cool in its own right. Like, I'm thinking maybe that, and you just put some stickers on it or something. Maybe that's the wave. The other thing that's kind of cool about different sticks is that they use slightly different button layouts. There's this thing called the Velix layout, I think. Arcade Velix. There's like a W in the middle, so I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, I guess it's Velix. Yeah, if you've seen any arcade stick, that's like the layout you'll be most familiar with, where the where the buttons are kind of laid out in, I guess, like kind of half a rainbow, right? Whereas the Namco arcades in Japan, they use a different layout called the Noir layout, and where it's more of a full rainbow. And everybody tells me that that's way more natural and just way fucking better. And the Hoary Fighting Edge, believe it or not, it uses this Noir layout, and I would like to try that. Funnily, that's one of the biggest reasons I want to get that stick. It's for PS4 only. It should also work on PS5. Cool thing that I also learned of not that long ago is the Brook Universal Fighting Board. It's like a little PCB, just a little metal fucking circuit chip thing, whatever, that you hook up all your buttons to, all your arcade buttons, and then you put it inside the stick, and that's the thing, that's the brain of the stick, right? It's the thing that the USB cable is going to come out of, and this Brook board is compatible with basically any console. I mean, I was gonna say any USB console. Well, that's not even true. Like, the PS2 has USB ports, and that's not gonna work, right? Because the PS2 doesn't support controllers like that. But like PS3, PS4, 360, Xbox One, Wii U, even, all that shit should work. And that seems like just a good sort of default option, right? I would slam that into the Hoary stick, put my favorite buttons in there, and then put the Korean lever in there, and then that's my fighting game stick, right? And then I would get the 8-bit one, put like, yeah, either the Hoary or the Sama lever that I have left over in there, then put some of the buttons that I have left over in there, and then use that for like retro stuff. Maybe for that I would then use an Octagon, you know, because then the movement range is not as important. Like I'm not doing circular motions or anything like that. I'm just mostly using it for arcade games and shit like that. So I think for that, having, again, distinct 8 directions would be preferable, right, over a square. And then finally, I would just save the Mayflash stick for, again, for like odd random occasions, right, where if I want to play a shmup on the Xbox 360 or something, right. I mean, I guess that's also up for debate, right? Like, maybe I'm gonna get even more used to the Korean lever, and then I'm gonna start liking it for shmups and shit like that. But it's nice to have smaller and bigger sticks, you know? I do really I have this thought in my brain, it would be so cool to just have people over sometime, and then everyone gets their own arcade stick, right? I don't know, I would need friends for that first. That's the initial hurdle. But yeah, once I figure that out, it's gonna be lit. Yeah, so, I don't know what really the point of this was. I guess I just wanted to, like, fucking ramble with this, like, topic that I'm very passionate about. I guess, like, yeah, the thing I want to give you on your way, sort of, is that this encouragement to just try different brands, start with a stick that's cheap. I guess when you're buying sticks, know why you're buying it long term, right? Like, make sure that's something you can use, right? I'm glad I bought the Mayflash, even though, again, it has like its flaws. I'm glad I bought it because I know I can just use the buttons and the stick itself, right? I can reuse them. There's also shit like the hitbox or the mixbox, where you don't actually have a lever to move, you just use buttons. There's the Smash stick coming out, specifically designed for Super Smash Bros., where it's an analog arcade lever, which seems like the fucking ideal way to play Melee, honestly. I'm definitely sort of getting to the point where the GameCube controller, I'm very passionate about Melee right now. It's like my preferred fighting game. And I'm getting to the point where the GameCube controller is like annoying me a little bit. And just having that extra flexibility with buttons. I think the buttons, just how freely you can move your hands, that's like one of the most underrated aspects of arcade sticks, honestly. It doesn't work with every game, right? I played through Alien Soldier and Mega Man X, for example, on an arcade stick, and it's not the most intuitive fit, right? You have to get used to it a little bit. But overall, like, for a lot of purposes, it's great. Yeah. It's just an interesting fucking world of shit. It's not, yeah, the modding aspect is not that intimidating, honestly. There's some stuff that, like I had a big fucking spook the other day when I put in the crown lever, the Korean lever. Because you have these pins on the side of the lever that you need to obviously connect to the board inside your stick too, right? With cables. And the Mayflash stick is like built in such a way where there's like a wall right next to the stick itself. And there was not actually room for like to just leave the pin sort of as it is and then connect the cable. And like, I'm not sure how it happened, right? But I just noticed at some point one of the pins got bent, right? It basically got bent like almost 90 degrees. I was like, oh my god, fuck, did I break it? Whoa. And that was very scary until I did some research and learned, yeah, the pins are designed to be bendable. So it shouldn't be that big of a deal, hopefully. Well, the stick works, right? It works fine. I'm just hoping once I put it in the Hoary Fighting Edge that I have way more room there and that I'm not gonna have to bend it anymore. Again, I mean, it's bent already, right? So it doesn't really matter at this point, right? And the stick works. So I probably shouldn't worry about it, but like, it was a little bit scary when it happened. generally, like, most sticks now are designed to be pretty easily moddable, and you don't need to solder anything, which is nice. It's pretty plug and play, honestly. You can definitely get confused with the cables. There's definitely room for error there. And like, yeah, oh yeah, on the Mayflash stick, I actually broke the plexi one time. I got a new plexi later, but that was pretty annoying as well. I didn't completely break it, but there was like some cracks in it, and that made me, just the cracks, that experience made me reluctant to like try swapping out artwork again, because like just the process of getting the artwork in was such a fucking pain, honestly, and like cutting it correctly. I should have probably gotten a proper sort of X-Acto knife beforehand, and that would have helped a lot. But yeah, like right now I had this really cool Street Fighter artwork for my Mayflash stick, and it still does look cool, but there's like a lot of little imperfections in it, and like places where I didn't cut it perfectly. And that's very frustrating. I guess that's also one of the reasons where I'm like, okay, I just wanna get a different stick that like looks cooler. Whatever. Yeah. Hope maybe I got you like a little bit passionate about this topic, right? I can't believe I talked about this for 40 minutes. I did not expect that at all. Yeah. Have fun playing Guilty Gear. See me in Gear. See me in Gear is the big meme right now. Actually, see me in Melee. Melee is way cooler. I like Guilty Gear though. Yeah. Goodbye.